He didn't want to fight. He was searching for history. But Sergeant Lucas Ren unearthed a secret shrine that no one was supposed to know about, a mansion built in secret and kept from the king, where Queen Elizabeth's most sacred coronation jewels were on display under someone else's name. And on top of it all, her picture was wiped out, ruined, and rewritten. That night, a royal guard went in by himself, fought down armed guards, faced the queen consort herself, and got back what the crown was about to lose forever. Before I show you how one soldier halted a royal betrayal and made King Charles do something no other king had ever done, make sure you are subscribed and have notifications turned on for your subscription. Let's get started now. The smooth marble of Windsor's ceremonial wing had that kind of stillness that only comes from observing for hundreds of years. Sergeant Lucas Ren had learned to appreciate the stillness. It sunk into his bones over the long hours of keeping watch and made every footstep and whispered conversation feel important. But today, something didn't feel right. He stood in his normal spot next to the velvet rope, his body fixed in that trained stillness that made people forget he was anything more than part of the building. The diplomatic tour was coming to an end. There were the usual handshakes and polite comments from the Kuwaiti ambassador and trade team. Lucas had seen it all before, but when the ambassador stopped next to the guide and pointed to the glass alcove where the crowning jewels should have been, Lucas's jaw tightened. "And the jewels for the coronation," the man said in an accent that showed he was really interested. "I saw them on my last visit in 2006. They were very beautiful." The guide's pause lasted a little too long, maybe half a second. "Sir, those are being restored right now. Velvet preservation. It's very delicate work." Lucas didn't move or say anything, but something icy sank in his chest because that was a lie. He had passed by that display every morning for 14 years. He could tell when the silence altered, and he could tell the difference between being missing and being empty. The diamond scepter, the emerald necklace Elizabeth wore during her 1953 coronation, and the coronation orb, they weren't being fixed up. They weren't there anymore. Lucas came back the next morning at exactly 2:40 in plain clothes, carrying his level 9 clearance card and the biometric override chip he saved for emergencies. As he went down into the legacy vault, past motion sensors and pressure plates that most guards didn't even know were there, the palace slept around him. This wasn't the public ceremonial wing. This is where the monarchy kept things that meant more to them in memory than in politics. The steel doors identified his palm print and opened with a mechanical sigh that sounded like his own breath. The ball was no longer there. The coronation necklace, which had an emerald drop, 2 strands, and Elizabeth's original crest as a clasp, and the scepter, which was a narrow-angled staff with diamonds on it, that she had carried while Zadok the priest rang through Westminster Abbey nearly 70 years earlier. Lucas moved slowly ahead, as if he were going to a crime scene. The silk pillows still had small dents where the items had been. The pressure plates below hadn't gone off. The person who took them knew exactly how to get past Windsor security. There is no sign-out sheet, no digital log, and no permission to use the archive terminal. There was only absence where there should have been legacy. He stood there in the bright, clean light of the preservation lights, remembering Elizabeth's voice from the inspection 8 years ago in the winter, when they were alone in this vault, just the two of them. She had put her hand on the scepter. She had said in a low voice, "If those ever leave this room, Britain will lose something it can't get back." He believed she meant it in a figurative way. Now, he wasn't so sure. Lucas turned around and left the vault without making a sound. This had nothing to do with money or how much it would sell for. The person who did this wanted something different entirely. They wanted to own the memories, and he was determined to find out who. Some of the most important talks happened when people weren't working. 3 nights later, Lucas was in the officer's lounge. He didn't want to be there with anybody else. He just needed to ponder somewhere else than his room. The royal butler who was leaving was there. He had had 3 whiskeys and was talking too much, which is what happens when you've been holding secrets for 40 years. The old man was talking to a young steward whose name Lucas didn't catch. "Her new place is something else," he said. "They call it the Retreat, but it's really just a monument to herself." Lucas drank his tea and listened. There are no windows on the north side. Half of the personnel can't go past the 2nd floor. The butler's voice sank to a whisper. "And get this. One of the transport guys told me she had them build a glass room that looked just like Her Late Majesty's vault. She called it her reflection hall." The younger man laughed uneasily, but the butler merely looked at the fire. "She's not grieving out there. She's doing something else." Lucas put down his cup and departed without saying anything. That night, he didn't sleep too well. By dawn, he was checking transport logs and pulling service routes. There was no official record of jewelry leaving the castle grounds. There weren't any convenient gaps in the camera feeds. The coronation pieces hadn't been stolen in some complicated way. They had been moved with care, even with respect. He found what he was looking for at the garage, where he talked to a former military driver who now worked as a courier for the royal family. "Do you ever deliver to a place called the Retreat?" The man ran his fingers through his gray beard. "That's funny that you should ask. A few weeks ago, someone from there signed for one of those old velvet crates. It was big and heavy, and it took 2 of us to load it. There were no customs markings or a manifest. They said it was for archival work, but," he shrugged, "seemed strange." Lucas could feel his heart racing. He went back to his room and started digging, not via palace records, but through the private dealer networks he had kept an eye on while working with traveling shows. That's when he saw the purchase order that made his blood run cold. A museum-quality display mount with pressure locks and light stabilization, made just for emerald and diamond regalia of royal pedigree. The shipping address came from a property trust that was created in 1947 and was formally transferred to a cultural foundation run by Camila Parker-Bowles 3 years ago. The site was hidden in conservation land in Norfolk. No public access, no supervision, and no staff save for private contractors. Lucas looked at the address until the numbers became blurry. Then he took out a piece of royal stationery, wrote a line, folded it in half, and put it in his coat pocket. He was going to knock down a shrine that had been built in the English countryside to honor Britain's past. As Lucas huddled behind the crumbling stone wall that bounded the property, the rain turned the Norfolk countryside into something out of a Gothic novel. The retreat appeared more like a private asylum than a residence. It was behind wrought iron gates, surrounded by fields that didn't show up on any aerial survey, and covered in hedgerows so thick that they kept animals out. It would look empty from above. It smelled like secrets from where Lucas knelt in the mud. He had been monitoring for 2 hours with military-grade binoculars. Nothing was happening at the gatehouse. There were 2 security cameras watching the main drive, but the southwest perimeter, as the conservation permits had said, was not being watched. These weren't former guardsmen doing security duties. They were private contractors, mercenaries in business suits, trained to follow orders instead of tradition. The micro-spike launcher shot up into the limestone over a servant's balcony with a gentle thoop. Lucas climbed up the old stone hand over hand, using his boots to find a place to stand until he reached the ledge. The window had 3 panes but no weapons. He couldn't tell if it was because of arrogance or a mistake. With the tiniest creak, the latch gave way, and he slipped into what looked like a linen closet that smelled strongly of lavender and had been unused for a long time. The air in the mansion felt off. Not quiet, but controlled, as if everything inside had been told to hold its breath and never let it out. He walked down hallways with marble floors and oil paintings of individuals he didn't know. There were footsteps coming from downstairs. 2 or 3 guards walked in a way that showed they were bored instead of alert. Lucas saw one go under a stained glass dome and noticed the illegally holstered sidearm and the relaxed stance of someone who had never expected danger. The first guard fell down without seeing him, a flash of bright LED light over his eyes, a stumble, and then Lucas's arm around his throat in a grasp that halted sound without leaving marks. The body went behind a thick curtain. Lucas went going, past a solarium, a gallery of portraits, and a stairwell that said archive. It didn't matter. He was hunting for something deeper, following the plan he had learned, and the gut feeling that had kept him alive in places scarier than here. He discovered what he was searching for at the end of a marble-lined hallway that probably cost more than most people's homes. It was a brass-paneled door with 2 navy blue guards on either side, their radios fastened to their belts as if they were protecting something important. But the estate's foundation blueprints showed him another option, a servant's tunnel under the west garden that led directly to the lowest floor. He came out 10 minutes later into a hallway that smelled like white flowers, fresh varnish, and something cold preservation oil, which is only used on valuable metals in controlled lighting. There was no nameplate or other marks on the carved wooden door at the end of the hall. Before he even touched the handle, it opened. What he saw on the other side was so shocking that it stuck in his mind like a brand. The chamber was huge, with high ceilings decorated with gold vines and small blue stars. There were mirrors on every wall, from floor to ceiling and edge to edge. They kept repeating the same image over and over again until it became an unending loop of fixation. A huge oil painting of Queen Elizabeth II hung at the other end of the room, in a raised alcove surrounded by red draperies. The eyes had been hacked out with two neat, perfect slashes across the painted pupils. Not vandalism, desecration. Three things that Lucas knew by heart were sitting below the ruined portrait. The diamond scepter was shaped like a weapon. The coronation orb is atop a pedestal that is made of glass, and the emerald necklace lay across a velvet bust, as if it were waiting for another queen to take it. The signs weren't descriptions of the museum, they were statements of purpose, taken from Monarchical Redundancy, 2023, heritage that has been reclaimed and is no longer hidden, recontextualized in the past for the future. Lucas knelt down next to the display of the orb. There were initials, CPB, carved into the base. They were hard to see unless you knew where to look. Camila Parker-Bowles, claimed and marked like farm animals. As Elizabeth's voice rang in his head, "We don't keep history to hoard it, Sergeant." His palms turned into fists. "We retain it so that no one else can change it." He had never really appreciated how heavy those words were until now. This was not saving, it was stealing, dressed up as curating. Legacy turned into vanity, and memory turned into a temple. Lucas turned on his body camera. As he wrote down everything, the small green light bounced off the glass cases. He wrote down the stolen diamonds, the propaganda signs, the painting with the blind slashes, and the marble with Camila's initials carved into it like a signature on stolen art. His phone didn't get any signal, it was jammed like a bunker. But the body camera would film everything, and save it in memory that couldn't be erased from a distance. The air here felt processed, filtered, and fake, as if it had been made to stop doubt from growing. This wasn't just a goal. This was blasphemy, disguised as protecting culture, and it was served in a home that had been created just for one woman's illusions of dynasty. Now he knew why there were no guards in this chamber. This wasn't stealing to Camilla, it was the coronation. Lucas Ren made a choice at that time that would shape everything that came after it. He wouldn't leave this place without anything. "Well," said a voice that sounded like silk over steel, "I guess the mice were going to find the cheese sooner or later." Lucas turned around slowly. Two contractors who appeared more like nightclub bouncers than security guards stood next to Camilla in the archway. She wore a silk robe that was open at the waist and held a crystal wine glass full to the brim. With her other hand on a marble column, it was as if the whole hall, this monument to her ego, was there only for her to think about at night. She gazed at him way a homeowner would look at a bug. "Don't look so sad, Sergeant." Her voice had that kind of condescension that comes from never been told no. "You've come all this way. At the very least, appreciate the care that goes into the repair. You guards were always so emotional about these ancient, dusty objects." She walked closer, her shoes clicking on the black marble floor. The light from the Scepter's exhibition hit the gold threads in her robe, making her look like the stolen treasures in a play. "It's funny, isn't it?" She kept going, swirling her drink. All this fuss over things that meant more to her than her own kids. Cold little woman with her cold little crown. Lucas spoke something for the first time since he got there. "You ruined her picture." She blinked, as if she was astonished he had spoken. "I freed it," she remarked. The eyes were the worst part, so critical. Like she was always watching, even from the grave. She pointed to the orb with her wine glass tilted. She used to show off these trinkets like they made her holy. But they didn't make her adored, did they? Not by Charles, not by the people, and not even by her own blood. Her look got sharper. "Sergeant, history doesn't remember queens who dress up. It remembers queens who win for real." Lucas's jaw got tight. "This isn't the past. This is vandalism, using lights that cost a lot of money." She laughed, gentle and bitter like the wind in winter. "Please, you are keeping a ghost safe. A woman who did nothing but rituals and stillness and didn't mean anything to anyone when she was alive. I am now the crown. They take pictures of me at state dinners. They quote me in the news." She left behind nothing but dust and disappointment. Another step in the right direction. The wine glass was almost empty. "Do you really think I took these?" She put them in glass coffins and buried them. She put them away from the world. "I gave them a reason to live again." Lucas never took his eyes off of hers. "No. You turned them into prizes for your own museum." The words hit me like a slap. The wine glass stopped moving in her hand. One of her workers went forward, realizing that the mood had changed. Camilla's voice got dangerously low. "Take him away." Without thinking, both guys moved. One reached for Lucas's shoulder, and the other went around him to flank him. They never got close to each other. Lucas had learned how to act quickly and without hesitation in locations where seconds mattered, and half measures got people killed. The first contractor turned toward him, and Lucas knocked him out with a precise shoulder hook that made a sound like cracking crystal when the man's head hit the mirrored pillar. The second lunged. Lucas ducked, swung his legs, and then hit him in the solar plexus with a single controlled elbow. Neither man moved again. Camilla looked at the bodies, then at Lucas. Her face went from surprise to terror to what may have been respect. Lucas adjusted his coat and pointed to the case. "That doesn't belong to you." She didn't have anything to say for the first time since he came in. She held her wine glass tightly, as if it were the only thing steady in a world that had abruptly changed beneath her feet. Lucas didn't wait for her to answer. He walked over to the case containing the scepter, hit the override button on his clearance chip, and heard the seal hiss as it opened. The staff with the diamond tip shone in the fake light, as if it were waiting for his touch. For a short, strange time, he heard Elizabeth's voice again. "If those ever leave this room." He pulled it up. The weight was just right, and it was balanced in a way that only hundreds of years of skill could make it. It could be a weapon, but it's not. It's a symbol, a vow. He turned, holding the scepter in one hand and the body cam in the other. Camilla's voice broke the quiet. "You can't leave here with that. Do you really think anyone will believe you? You are a guard. I'm a queen. My word will bury you before yours even sees the light of day." Lucas didn't say anything. He walked toward the door. He heard the sound of glass breaking behind him, her wine glass hitting the floor. The shatter sounded like gunfire in the shrine. The first floodlights were shining across the fields by the time he got to the front gates of the hideaway. Security backup. Black SUVs driving up the driveway. Lucas held hold to the scepter tighter and kept walking, right into the storm. It took 3 days for the order to come through. The castle was quiet, like it always was during crises. There were whispers in long hallways, secret memos, and royal press releases that stated everything and nothing at the same time. Lucas stayed on watch without saying anything, knowing that the video from his body camera was going up higher than any guard was supposed to go. It was not a request when the summons came. Sergeant Lucas Ren delivered it by hand. The Windsor State Room. At midnight. When he got there, the room was empty except for one person standing at the long table where treaties were normally signed. Charles. No crown, no royal clothes, and no entourage. Only the king was there, and his face had more lines than Lucas remembered. His eyes were ringed with shadows from not sleeping. The orb, the necklace, and the scepter were all on the table. A neighboring monitor showed the body cam footage, which was locked on the frame of Camilla, standing in front of Elizabeth's ruined photo. Lucas didn't glance at Charles. Did not glance at the jewelry either. He stared at the screen as if he were defying it to blink first. At last, he spoke. His voice was low and rough. "Do you know what this implies, Sergeant?" Lucas didn't say anything. He knew better than to speak up when a king or queen posed a question like that. Finally, Charles turned, and his face was unreadable. "It means that the crown has been poisoned from the inside. It means that the lady I promised God I would protect has taken something that was never hers, and it means the people can never know." He put one hand on the orb, and his fingers shook a little. "If this gets out, the monarchy will fall apart. Not in years, in a few days. Do you get it?" Lucas nodded once. Charles's jaw got tight. Then he spoke things that no king had ever said before. "Kill them." Lucas blinked. "Your Majesty." "I said destroy them." Charles's palm hit the table hard, shaking the orb in its stand. "If these symbols can be turned into weapons against the crown, then they are not symbols anymore. They are threats, and threats must be stopped." The room was really quiet. Lucas looked at the scepter, the orb, and the necklace, and didn't see treasures. He saw hundreds of years, crowns, battles, vows. Elizabeth's hand was on the scepter, and she was whispering about her legacy, and now her son telling them to be erased. Lucas couldn't put a name to what was burning in Charles's eyes. Anger, desperation, maybe sadness, masquerading as command. "Sergeant, this is just between us, not anyone else. You saw what she made. You saw what she did. We can only save the crown if we get rid of the infection." Lucas stared down at the scepter. The diamonds sparkled in the faint light, like a fading star. He could still hear Elizabeth's voice in his head. "If those ever leave this room, Britain will lose something it can't buy back." The monarch himself was asking for it now. Lucas offered a tiny nod. The sound of generators roaring to life outside cut through the rain, and the retreat began its journey back to the ground from which it had been created. "Burn it," boomed through the mansion like a death knell. Charles didn't need to raise his voice. He talked with the power of 1,000 years of continuous succession, and it was enough to move mountains. Within seconds, 8 plainclothes policemen with Privy Council credentials and climate-controlled travel cases filled the room. They were his personal security detail. No yelling, no drama that isn't needed. This wasn't a raid. This was an erasure. Camilla backed up to the mirrored wall, and her wineglass eventually slipped from her limp fingers and broke on the marble floor. In the unexpected calm, the sound resonated like glass cracking. She muttered, "You can't do this," but even she could tell how empty her words sounded. Charles took out a little leather folder and took out one piece of paper. Per the time he gave it to Colonel Henso, his signature was already dried. It was an order to take it away and kill him right away, per the king's right. Lucas moved forward and started the work that had brought him here. He took the orb out of its case with the same respect he had showed before formal ceremonies. When the vacuum seal let go, it hissed, just like the mansion itself did when it lost. 2 operatives behind him put the scepter and necklace in museum-quality boxes lined with royal preservation foam. Every move was written down, time-stamped and recorded. None of it would ever be written down in an official record, but the crown had its own means of remembering what was important. Camilla watched in despair as her perfectly planned fantasy was being taken apart. "These were given to me. These were given." Charles cut her off with the sharpness of a knife. "Nothing in this room was given to you. You stole it, hoarded it, and turned it into a twisted shrine to your own imagined importance." She stepped nearer, her voice breaking with desperation. "You let her die, thinking I'd carry on her legacy. You stood by her grave, and let me believe." "I let you believe nothing," he said. "You made up this whole story by yourself." Colonel Henso wiped his mouth. "Sir, the demolition crew has confirmed perimeter security. A state clearing will begin within the hour." Charles nodded once. "Nothing is left. Not the buildings, not the foundations, and not even the marble you carved with your initials like a medieval warlord." Camilla finally lost it. "You're doing this for the cameras, aren't you? For William, for the press, and for all those dusty courtiers who never liked me." Her voice got sharp. "Let them print this. He loved me more than he ever loved her." Lucas walked past her with the orb in his hands, its weight strong and familiar. "He chose me over his own mother," she said, spitting the words at his back like poison. Lucas didn't stop walking, turn around or even look at her. Outside, royal engineers were already moving demolition tools over the well-kept grass. Under canvas covers, fuel drums appeared. They took the furniture apart and put it on trucks. The damaged picture of Elizabeth was taken away wrapped in black material, like a body being taken away from a murder scene. Camilla made one last attempt to show that she was in charge, as she had convinced herself she was. "This is royal land." Charles walked into the downpour without looking back. It was, and just like that she was alone in a house that was already starting to fade away. Lucas put the last case into the truck as the first flames started to lick at the eastern wing. Nobody cheered when things were destroyed. No one took pictures to keep for the future. He turned around once to gaze at the edifice that had harbored such meticulously bred craziness. Boots and tools were already trampling the white roses along the fence in the garden. The shrine to stolen memories was turning back into ash and dirt. History was starting to get better. The black transport vehicle drove past Windsor's old gates an hour before dawn. There was no ceremony to honor its return. There weren't any crowds to see the return of what had been stolen. The sound of gravel crunching under heavy tires and the weight of things that had finally arrived home. Lucas Ren was the first to step out. His uniform was wet from the rain and smoke, and his gloves were dirty from the soot and the cold, hard evidence of justice served. As Lucas walked by, the guards at the gate discreetly parted. One of them gave him a barely noticeable nod. Lucas was carrying the case that held the memories of a nation. Windsor slept while he traversed the old halls, and the sound of his footsteps echoed off stones that had seen many such excursions over the years. The legacy vault sat in the dark, waiting like it would never end. He opened the room with Elizabeth's key, which was kept in a locked bag within the carrying container. The mechanism moved smoothly, as if it had been waiting for this time. Everything inside was just right. Gleaming display cases, pedestals lined with silk, and the slight smell of preservation wax and antique stones. Only the main exhibit was wrong. It was empty, robbed, and made to look like curation. Lucas put the orb back in its silk imprint first. It fit neatly into the space it had left behind, as if it had never left at all. He changed the angle a little bit so that the eastern light came through the stained glass windows, just like the Queen had told him to do during one of those formal inspections years ago. Next came the necklace. Then the Scepter, the security archivist who looked like a shadow, recorded the repair of each piece when it was returned. There were no words spoken. There was no need for any. When everything was in place, the chief curator came in silently and stood next to Lucas. They both looked at the display, which was finally finished again. "Good," she said in a low voice. That one word meant more than any speech or official praise ever could. Lucas signed the last log entry in ink. His signature was added to the handwritten record that went back decades. No digital backups, no technological trails, just his name, the date, and the restoration of what should never have been lost. He locked the vault and put Elizabeth's key back in the felt-lined box on her old desk, where it had been since she died. There was no ceremony, no headlines in the morning papers, and no official declaration from the palace. But word spread through Windsor's halls the way it usually did, discreetly between individuals who knew the difference between news and truth. As they passed, the footmen nodded. Curators gave quiet thanks. A younger guard outside the vault looked up as Lucas walked past. "Sir," he murmured softly. "Thank you." Lucas stopped, looked him in the eye, and for the first time in a long time, he gave something back. It was never about being thankful. He went back to work that morning as the sun came up and shone through the stained glass windows, making patterns of colored light on the old stones that he was used to seeing. The vault behind him held more than just jewelry and precious metals. It had weight, stillness, and history that didn't need to be shown to be important. It just needed to be kept safe from people who would change it into something it wasn't meant to be. Smoke was still rising from what had formerly been dubbed the retreat. By nightfall there would be nothing left but burned land and the memory of a falsehood that had eaten itself apart. As Lucas took his role, he thought about how certain legacies weren't passed down through family or marriage. They were gained by being careful, and kept safe by the quiet determination of those who knew that not everything valuable needed to be seen by everyone. Some things were designed to stay hidden, safe from people the world would never know or remember, but the crown would remember, and that was all that mattered. What do you think? Should King Charles have instructed Camilla's estate to be completely destroyed? Was it right for the royal guard to act on their own before telling higher-ups? And do you think that some royal items should ever leave the crown's protection, even for a short time? Let us know what you think in the comments. We read all of them. If you think legacy should be conserved and not changed, please like this video and subscribe to our channel. Hit the notification bell so you don't miss our next story. If you know someone who still thinks royal guards are only for show, email them this video. The following story is about what happened when a US senator tried to make a royal guard look bad on live TV. Let's just say that the show never got on the air. Next, watch that, tomorrow at the same time. Until then, keep in mind that not everything is passed down.